Welcome to Odyssey's Influencer Insights, the podcast where we dive into all things influencers, content creators, social media, you name it. If you're interested in that, well, you have come to the right place. I'm your host, Ezra. If you haven't listened to an episode yet, no problem. I think this is a great place to start, and you'll hear why in a second. But I'm very excited to bring to you guys what I have here today in this episode. So, this is going to be a little bit different of a style than our previous episodes. To date, I have now done 12 episodes, and there's an intro episode, another episode similar to this. So we have 9 interviews so far, and maybe 10 would have been the right time to do what I'm doing here today. But honestly, I like the number 9 better, so I thought, why not go with 9? I think I have a lot of good information to tell you guys, and what we're going to be doing today is I'll be going through key things that I took away from each interviewee so far to date and talk about those key things and what you can take away, whether you're established influencer wanting to learn a little more about content creators, honestly, life lessons, a lot of different things like that from peers, or just, either getting into the influencer social media game or scared to and want to hear a little bit more before you get into that. Well, then I think you came to the right place, and I'm very excited to get into this episode. So without further ado, let's just jump right into things. So the first episode that I had to date was with Ari. Shout out Ari for being my first podcast guest. And Ari had a very interesting story. And obviously, I'm not going to say this for each person, but if you haven't seen an episode, especially if what I'm saying right now you connect with and you want to learn more, definitely check out each episode. They're available Apple, YouTube, Spotify, you name it. So Ari, very interesting story. He originally lived in a small town in the US, and his parents wanted him to do a little more of a conventional path, go to college, get a good job, etc. But from a young age, he knew that maybe school wasn't necessarily for him. Being kind of contained in that small bubble wasn't necessarily for him, and he knew he wanted to do something more creative. And his parents weren't necessarily super supportive of that. They wanted him to, like I said, be in a more conventional path. But from the beginning, he really, truly believed in himself. And right at 18, he moved to LA to pursue those dreams. And again, a really core thing that I took from him was believing in himself, even if from the beginning, and this is another thing which he said, and I heard multiple other times, is being delusional, right? You got to believe in yourself, but at times when you're starting out, delusion is a factor there. I mean, he's moving to LA. He might not have that much experience with this. He's got to pay rent right away. He's got to start adulting. You got to be a little delusional to pull something like that off and do it. But it's all about believing in yourself. Not 90%, not 85%, maybe, maybe I'll pull this off, maybe I won't, and, not be homeless or something like that. No, he was 100% confident that when he moved to LA, he could make this happen. So it's an amazing story. I'm really happy for him and what he's been able to do up to this day. And I think he's going to see so much success in the future. So our takeaway here is be confident, believe in your abilities, and just believe that you can do something extraordinary. And every day, carry yourself like you can believe that. And before you know it, you'll be there. So great advice. That's what I already said, but you see it throughout. Any successful person really says you have to believe in yourself. Next, we're moving on to the next guest I had, which is Jay Blake. And he said a lot of really great things. And one thing I'm focusing on specifically here, just to let you guys know, is not necessarily life advice, but more things content creation. So I think what Ari said is more life advice, but also can be content creation. But one thing that Jay Blake said, which I really liked, was tagging and getting attention. And so he brought up the story where this was before he really had a big following. He was tagging, he thought, there was a certain headphone that he wanted. I forget what the brand was, but he wanted this certain pair of headphones. And so it's not like he had a brand collaboration, didn't even reach out to them and say, hey, this is my reach, whatever, I want to collaborate. No, he just posted, I think it was on Twitter at the time, and just said, hey, for my birthday, I'm really hoping to get these headphones. Absolutely love these headphones. Tagged the brand, gave them a little shout out, etc. And lo and behold, they reached out to him and said, hey man, love your content. thanks for putting yourself out there. We'd love to give you a pair of headphones. And what he preached and what I really took away was, one, it's super easy to get people's attention nowadays. Even a big brand, they've got hundreds of thousands of followers. They're a super successful headphone company. This guy just tweets, this is a great present for me for Christmas or birthday, and they send him a headphone. So you really never know by putting yourself out there. And if you really like certain brands, let's say you're hiking, and I always wear an Arc'teryx jacket. Arc'teryx is a big company. They're hard to collaborate with. But why not just tag Arc'teryx? Tag a different company. Whatever you're wearing, tag it, because you never know what could happen putting yourself out there. And even if you don't get that collaboration with that brand, let's say it's Arc'teryx or that headphone company for his example, then still maybe someone else, maybe a different company will see that. So really the takeaway there is, if you want, just tag brands you want to work with. Even if you don't have a big audience, you really just don't know what's going to happen. And when he said that in our discussion, I really just, it took me back. I just thought that was absolutely amazing advice. So yeah, moving on. Now we had Jackson Brenner on the podcast, and again, a lot of amazing things there. He was originally from Australia, then moved to Los Angeles again to pursue his creative dreams, originally in radio, and now is working at one of the biggest female podcasting companies in the US, if not the world. It's super successful company nonetheless, and Jackson's a very accomplished, impressive guy. And one thing he told me about was the power of authenticity. And he said working in podcasting, when he had talent coming in and before they went on shows, he really focused and explained to them the idea of authenticity. And if you're not comfortable with who you are in your own content, your audience will see that. And it's extremely important when either you've already got a social media presence or you're just starting out. The key thing there is that people want to see who you really are, right? And if they could tell that you're BSing, as he said on his podcast, or on the podcast, people are going to be able to tell that, right? Your audience can sense inauthenticity. So the key thing there is just be yourself, embrace your individuality, and it's going to show through your content. And social media is massive. There's a lot of people that are going to lean and enjoy what you do. So just be authentic and, again, believe in yourself. Great things there. Next, we've got, and I apologize if I'm going too fast. I'm just, this is obviously a shorter episode, but again, if any of these interest you, I can't say everything about each episode. There's so much to talk about. So definitely check each of those out. But next up, I had Paulina. Again, all these people have amazing stories. She was originally from Russia, moved to the United States for school, and then kind of found love in hiking, adventure, photography, etc. And one key thing we talked about was optimizing your social media and your content for brand deals. And one thing that Paulina mentioned that was quite interesting to me is she works both as an influencer content creator as well as for marketing. And she said that as someone that works on that brand side, and I totally agree with her, you want to think from the mindset of a marketer, right? Treat the brands like they're your own. For example, one, just when you're creating content, you want to think, what type of content does the brand want? What you want, call to actions, right? You want to bring whoever's looking at your content to the brand's website, right? You want certain photos to pop out with the brand images, things like that. There's a lot of different small things that you really are able to take away and understand while thinking from that brand's perspective. And when you have a brand deal, you want to think, like Paulina said, like that brand, that product is your baby, right? You can't just think of it as some little side gig where you're getting a little money. No, you want to think of this as something that's precious, that's important to you, just as it would be as if it was your own brand, and create content like that. And so I think a key takeaway there is just, really think from the perspective of the marketer, be authentic. And I really think just think from that perspective is a key thing that will help turn your content. And when you land those brand deals, to better engagement and hopefully long-term partners, because when you're creating great content that aligns with that brand, they're probably going to want to work longer term with you, and other brands are going to find you as well through that. So yeah, great advice there. Moving on to another, this is a common pattern, another guy that has an amazing life story. Can't get into everything, but he was actually born, this is major, he was born in Togo, Africa, moved to the US with his family. And one thing that stood out to him, or he had just amazing life stories. I would say this podcast was a little less about kind of influencers, content creation, more just about life. And if you want life story from an entrepreneurship, just great advice, definitely check out that episode. And one thing that really stood out to me here was what he said about kind of your life path and how life is like hiking, right? Some people say life is like a marathon, which can be true, but a marathon is just, beginning to end pretty flat, right? You're running on a flat surface. But no, he said life is like hiking because there's ups and downs, there's peaks, and at a certain point in your life, you can see kind of that end goal, right? You can see that end goal, you can see the end of your life. And what's beautiful about that is that in your day-to-day life, especially in terms of like social media, influencers, entrepreneurship, things like that, you can see a higher peak of where you want to be. For example, he said on the news, on TV, at work, maybe it's your boss, or on social media, maybe you're a travel, or you're trying to become a travel influencer, and you see someone with 100,000 followers, amazing content, things like that. That is that higher peak. So you could take away there is understanding life is like that. Set goals that bring you closer to those heights, right? It's not a marathon. You want to be constantly climbing up that hill. And so you can use these different people that you see in your life on these different platforms, whatever that may be, and utilize that to start competing with them, right? Get closer, and maybe even at some point be, at that same level or even surpass them. So a takeaway here is just focus on decisions that will bring you closer to the success that you envision and align with what you see. And you could utilize these people in your life that are at higher peaks to be at that spot. So I think it's a great life advice piece. And also for social media, it is definitely relevant. So that really stood out to me. So now we had J4, incredible guy in the film, super successful filmmaker, travel photographer. And so one thing that I really enjoyed that we talked about was where he grew up, he didn't really travel that much. And at a certain point in his life, he got quite into traveling. And he might not have had that much money at the time, but he wanted to continue traveling. So he explained that he bought a ticket and would get to a place and then want to figure out how he could stay there for free. One, so save money while traveling, but also build up his content portfolio. So a genius thing that he said was before he had an audience, had a social media, but was still working on improving his content, he would, before he went to a place or when he's at the place, maybe moving around, whatever that may be, reach out to hotels. But this can really work for anything. But in this example, would reach out to hotels, hostels, wherever you stay at, whatever's, more comfortable for you, and say, hey, I'm Ezra from Vancouver, Canada. I'm a content creator, and I'm coming to Hawaii in a couple of weeks. I'd love to film content for you. Can I just stay for free and I'll give you the content? And that's a great deal. I mean, a free stay, especially at a hostel where it's like $20 or so, or a fairly cheap hotel, whatever that may be. And it could even be an expensive hotel. I'm not saying that, but one, you can stay at that place for free. They get extraordinary content from you that they might not be able to get, especially in maybe more kind of third world countries and stuff where maybe photography and content creation isn't as accessible. You're giving them amazing content, right? And you don't need a big social media presence because there's different deals you can have. But for this example, it's not going on your social media. It's just creating content, UGC, user generated content for that company. So I just thought that this was a great piece of advice for specifically travel, but can really be anything where beauty, fashion, whatever, lifestyle, just you got to be creative and figure out ways that you can utilize this content creation, what you're doing, and on the way to getting a big audience, figuring out ways to stay at places for free, plus build your portfolio, right? Because another thing you mentioned is once he did this, he was able to leverage that content that he created for that hotel, and actually use that for the next hotel, and then just builds off that. And eventually you're staying at a free place in Hawaii, and next thing you know, you might be staying in the Fairmont and they might be paying you because you've already done a couple of these. And so now you're traveling and getting paid to do that without even a follower, without even a following at all. So amazing advice there. Really interesting stuff. Next, I'm going to talk about Chris, where, yeah, there's so much to talk about in this, but one thing that really stood out to me is, I guess, kind of consistency, but more specifically, you talked about how there's so much content out there, right? And sometimes it can be a little overwhelming where you think, I don't even know where to start. I want to do maybe travel, whatever your niche is. It's intimidating. There's just so much stuff out there. But first, Chris he emphasized that consistency will always beat that, right? So even if you're interested in travel and you feel like there's just too much travel, is there even a point of that? The reality is that it's not like we're too late. It's now almost 2025. It's not too late. You can still like go viral. You can still get views. You can still build up over time. It doesn't matter. You just want to be consistent. But not just posting consistently, but really another thing he emphasized is seeing what you're good at and what you love at. And I feel like that is what he says you should really focus on. So if cooking is your passion, basketball is your passion, traveling is your passion, hockey is your passion, whatever that may be, focus on that. And that's how you can differentiate yourself, because one, you're good at that thing, you understand that thing. So putting those two things together, really the takeaway here is focusing on what you love by standing out there and being consistent. Really, it doesn't matter that we're almost in this overshare time now. You can still succeed in social media, become an influencer, reach your dreams, whatever that may be. Just follow that. So, yeah, sorry guys, this is an action-packed episode, but we're almost done here. So the next one is Brian. And one thing I really liked about the advice that he gave in our conversation was exploring unconventional industries. And so he talked about that a lot of times when influencers are starting to look for brand deals, they look for the quote unquote sexy brand deals, right? You want to work for Bugatti, Mercedes, you want to work for, let's say, in the travel, hiking, outdoor, you want to work for Arc'teryx, Lululemon, Patagonia, you want to work for the Fairmont or the Shangri-La luxury travel resorts. And that makes sense. And that's very fair, right? I mean, that's a great goal to have. That would be amazing. But brand deals at this point, and not saying obviously you can't do it, you can, but brand deals are fairly saturated right now. They're oversaturated. But one thing that he said is start looking at those unconventional industries. Start looking where everybody's looking over here at these sexy industries. Why don't you look at the not so sexy industries, at stuff like trades and local businesses and landscaping? And these industries still need content creators just like anybody else, right? Just like those travel ones, just like Mercedes, these landscapers and whatever, like these quote unquote less sexy industries, they're still amazing industries, not saying that, but less glamorous maybe than those other ones, still need that same services. And that is where less people are going than things like those sexy ones, right? So go for those less unconventional industries. That's where there's going to be a less saturated market. There's plenty of business for content creators there. And yeah, just have an open mind and kind of just think outside of the box. So I really thought that was amazing advice from Brian. And now moving on to my most recent episode. Excited there's going to be this one that hopefully you're watching right now. And then we've got another one next week. And yeah, so much great things to go still. But I'm really happy with all the advice so far. And so the last one that I'm going to talk about today was Liana. And similar to I think it was Chris. One thing she's a very amazing person, inspiring. She does a lot of different things from um, like consulting for travel for creators, her own photography business, all this different stuff, group trips. One thing that I asked her though was she does consulting and advice for content creators. So as this is a place for content creators and influencers to learn about, I asked what are the most common roadblocks she sees in creators. And what she says is that it's very common that content creators will feel stuck. They feel that, maybe their content quality is not good enough. Maybe their message, they're not sure what their message is. They're overwhelmed by, again, feeling that everything's super oversaturated. And so the key advice that she says here is focus on how you're unique. And I think that this does tie into what we've said before, authenticity, what Jackson said, what Chris said. This is a big thing. And in a second, I'll go over the biggest key takeaways just in a minute. But focus on your individuality, right? Because there's millions of people on social media. There's only one of you, right? So focus on that. How are you different? Even if you're in the travel niche, what you create will be different than everybody else, right? So focus on how you're different. Really strive to, just how is what you're offering different. Embrace that, embrace what sets you apart. Don't kind of hide it. And that's how you can succeed in this industry. So absolutely amazing advice. I will quickly talk about in a second, just if you got this far, quick bite size. If let's say you just want to save this last section, what are the key takeaways that I think that you can really use right now to start on your social media game, your entrepreneurship game, your life game, whatever that is? One, believe in yourself. Confidence is everything. Two, embrace your individuality because there's only one of you. Three, be consistent. Even if you have great content, a great message, great product, if you're not consistent with it, it doesn't really matter because people probably aren't going to find you. So be consistent. That trumps literally everything. Think from a brand's perspective when you want to do these brand collaborations and start making money and stuff. You want to not just think from a content creator, not just think from your perspective, right? But you got to think from the other person's perspective. You got to think what would make them happy, what would make them satisfied with your product, etc. Think from their perspective, think from the marketer's perspective. Last, power of networking. I didn't really talk about this that much, almost because everybody said it, so it wasn't as unique, but everybody talks about networking. Everybody talks about their circle. People said, again, if you want to become a millionaire, sit in a room of 5 millionaires. Networking relationships are really the key to growth in any industry, and social media isn't different than anything else. So lean on other people, find mentors. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, they're all amazing now. You can reach out to people, communicate, make friends, whatever that is. And that is all we got today. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, I hope you did. It was a little different, but I feel like I was able to provide a lot of interesting, hopefully helpful tips and information for whatever your goals are, really. And if you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a review, send this to a friend, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.